My name's Wade, and I get the pleasure of talking this morning. Being men, we're always about competition. So for the last 2 weeks, Ryan did one chapter, Daniel did one chapter last week, but today we get to do 3. So I'm the man of the group. Like I said, this morning we're going to be in Joshua, and we're going to do chapters 3 through 5. And to give you a recap of where we're at this morning. Actually, I wanted to, start out saying that as I read the Word, as I read the Bible, it's a missional book. It's launching us to do something. And so I want to encourage you that as we go through these chapters this morning, that you're asking God, what's next for me? Maybe not force it into your life of how you can transform just yourself, but maybe how you can transform somebody else. So just have that in the back of your mind as we read and go through this morning. So to give you a recap, this is where the Israelites are sitting right now. You got 1 million people sitting on the edge of the Jordan River. For the last 40 years, they've been following this dude Moses around in the wilderness because they were scared and they didn't trust God. So Moses has died. The leadership is now fallen to Joshua. And so they're camped at the edge of the river, about to go into the land that God had promised them. So that's where we're sitting at this morning. And as we open up in the first part of chapter 3, it says that the Lord spoke to Joshua. Now, I don't know if Joshua saw God, but what he felt, what he heard, he knew was God's voice. Verse 7 actually said, "Now the Lord said to Joshua, 'This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you.'" Now, let's think about that for a moment. The Lord spoke to Joshua. My, question that I want you guys to think about this morning is, do you hear from God? How do you know the voice that you hear in your life and the leading that you have is from God? Now, there's, I know I'll be honest, in my life, I've opened up the Word and I've read it, and it hasn't done a lot. I don't know if probably the posture of my heart, but I haven't, heard from God. And as, I've grown and realized that sometimes reading the Word is not where God speaks. I was actually talking with Michael Boggs a few weeks ago, and I was asking him, with his gifting and his talent, if there's a difference when he reads the Word or if he's sitting with a group of men or women writing a song. So, Boggs, are you here? Would you kind of share what you shared with me?
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about was just, I feel like sometimes I hear the Lord better in nature, sometimes in community with other people, having conversation. And maybe it's just that I'm in a place where I can actually hear the Lord a little bit better. Maybe he's always speaking, and there's just certain environments or certain places I tend to listen better.
So if and that's what I'm wanting to encourage you. If you find yourself where it's maybe it's not just having the quiet time reading the Word. Maybe it is being in nature. Maybe it's woodworking in your shop. But I encourage you to find that place, that space where you hear most intently from God. And as I'm looking around here, it's we also can hear God's voice in each other. We're growing in relationship together in the small groups. We have the ability that when God speaks to us, that we can look at the Word and see if it matches up with what we're hearing. But we also have the men across from us that we can openly share with and see if they're hearing the same thing. So like I encourage you guys to use each other to discern if God is speaking to you. Now, like I said, so you're sitting here and God's speaking to Joshua, telling him, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to go. And so he instructs Joshua to send the Ark of the Covenant in front of him. This is God's throne. This is where God sits on earth. And so he said, send it into the river and just have the priest stand there. And then as they do this, as the priests are obedient to what Joshua's instruction, the water stops. So they're walking through on dry ground. And these Israelites are seeing this, and they're like, 40 years ago, this same thing happened, except without the Ark of the Covenant. God parted the waters of the Red Sea for them to go from slavery to freedom. And this is only something that God can do. This is nothing that, he didn't instruct them to build a dam to, make it where they all could pass. God's like, I got this. Just do what I'm asking, and I'll take care of it. So after the whole nation of Israel crosses on dry ground, 12 men, one from each tribe, pick up stones and put them on a pillar on the other side of the Jordan River. And so as I was reading it and preparing, I'm like, well, why would they do that? And God answers, whenever we ask, it's like, why, God? He typically answers. So in chapter 4, verse 6, he says, let this be a sign among you. So these rocks, this pile of rocks. He's like, so that when your children ask later, saying, what do these stones mean? Then you shall say to them, because of the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, so that these stones shall become a memorial to the sons of Israel forever. So that it's not only this pillar, like on the side, so like they can see what God did, but Joshua also sets up a pillar in the middle of the river to signify this is where the priest stood. Now, I think it's important that we, memorial stones. Like God in his knowing knows that generations upon generations later, the Israelites can be able to point to these stones and say, this is what God did. This is how he brought us into his land. Like I said, just as he dried up the Red Sea, this is if you almost want to look at it as a closing, same way going out, same way coming in. So now the nation of Israel is in the promised land. All the men who were born in the wilderness needed to be circumcised. And that was done because the circumcision was not done as they wondered. And it says that the time for the celebration of the Passover came, and the people came ate from the fruits of the land, and then God stopped sending manna. At the close of the chapter, Joshua encounters God. It says the captain of the Lord of hosts, and is instructed, just as Moses was when he encountered God at the burning bush, to remove his sandals because the place being now in the promised land is holy ground. Like just a few moments ago, I shared with you guys that I felt like this passage was missional. And that may be confusing to some of you. But let me help break that down a little bit. God's chosen people are wandering in the wilderness. They've seen and experienced God in ways that no one else has before. They've experienced miracles. And I wrote down a quick list of these miracles. You have the parting of the Red Sea. You have the giving of the 10 Commandments or the law. Every day they woke up, they saw the pillar of fire that would lead them where to go. And if they were traveling at night, the pillar of fire at night and the pillar of smoke during the day. They even saw the earth open up and swallow men, swallow people that were grumbling. Now, I imagine you could probably sit there and think of, somebody in the cubicle or the office next to you that you hoping God would open up and, swallow them just because they're that guy. But then, or like as a side note, there's always the one crazy person at the office. And if you're struggling to find out who that crazy person is, it's probably you. So staff, don't be looking at each other just to, keep everything civil. God also, as a miracle, he sent manna from heaven. And then when the Israelites didn't want it or got fed up with manna, he sent quail. He also brought water from a rock. And now he's parting the Jordan River, bringing them into the promised land. Now, I'm sure over the last 40 years, they probably had cuts and scrapes and bruises and injuries along the way. And just like us today, like if you look at your body, you got scars, and each scar that you have has a story. Like I'm sure you could probably roll up your pant leg and find a scar that you had a bike accident when you were a kid. Or if you played a sport, you have scars. I'm sure, Kevin, you could show us scars from your accident a few years back. So some scars that we have are accidents. We don't cause those, but some scars that we have is probably something we've done like stupidly. Myself, I have scars on my body from a few years ago when I attempted suicide. I have suicide scars. But not all scars are physical. Some scars are emotional. Like in my life, I have scars from memories of times when my dad and I didn't have a good relationship growing up. I have emotional scars from having to bury a child at 2 years old. But there's not only just physical scars or emotional scars, there's also spiritual scars. In my line of work, I've heard things from people that they've experienced that that just make you sick. But I've also scarred myself spiritually by looking at pornography. I mean, let's be honest. It's something that can draw everybody inside the church and outside the church. But it happens. It's a scar. But in every situation, in every moment, God was with me. Now, like getting back to the Israelites, they're on the side of the Jordan River. They're in the promised land. And in chapter 5, the first verse, it says, "Now it came about when all the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan to the west, and all the kings of the Canaanite who were by the sea, heard how the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan before the sons of Israel. Until now they had crossed. Their hearts had melted." Daniel Buttram last week talked about how the city of Jericho, their hearts were already melting. And it says here that there was no spirit in them any longer because of the sons of Israel. So like every week we come, and we did it this morning. We stand up and we profess the Outpost liturgy as believing men. We have all lived, no matter where we're at or where we're coming from, we've all lived and experienced God in some way. We've all wandered in the wilderness. Some of us have longer times in the wilderness than others. Some of us, found God at age 6. Maybe some of us have found God at age 60. But we've all had our wanderings and our wrestlings with God. And along the way, getting cuts and scrapes and scars. So today, I wanted to show you, and feel free to take these with you, that as, with the memorial stones, like I said, pornography, death and rejection, suicide. They're all stones and experiences that we carry. And sometimes as men, we don't set the stones down on the other side of the Jordan. Sometimes we carry the burden with us of those memories, those experiences. Like God said, set them down, and this will be a sign to your children. But we just read that not only did the children of Israel see this pile of stones, you had the Amorites and the Canaanites who knew what God did, so they could also see the stones. And so when I say that this passage, these 3 chapters are missional, I'm asking you to think about who in your life is the Amorite and the Canaanite. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you're still carrying the memorial stones you picked up along the way. Maybe you're, burdened and heavy and coming in and like, this is, what is this all about? So this is like a time and a place to sit down shame of choices. Maybe it's time to, be an open book to share about addictions and past mistakes. So it's a short time this morning, so you guys have a lot of time to be together. But as we, break up this morning and head to the groups, I want you to think about, how have you personally experienced God? How in your life has God brought you through things or experienced that? What miracles has he done for you? Maybe it's a time to share about, the scars that you have. And not only do you have to carry the burdens that you've been carrying, but we can help you carry them. Like the story was brought up, I think, a few weeks ago about Aaron and Hur, who held up the arms of Moses. Maybe it's time that you let somebody do that for you. Maybe it's time to set down the burdens of the rocks that you're carrying. But as we leave here today, as we're done with small groups, we got, most of us came in this side of the church. So as you walk through the doors to head out to your car, maybe think about right now we're on one side of the Jordan River, and we're preparing to go into the place where the Amorites and the Canaanites are. So maybe we can go and we can set down some memorial stones for our coworkers. Or maybe it's the checkout at Walmart or the guy at Quick Trip that you always see. Just some of my thoughts that as we leave here today. But I encourage you that if you need maybe a physical reminder of a memorial stone, please, come up and take whatever you need to remember what God is asking you to do today. Thanks.